Hear that many times today. We're going to the City and County of San Francisco, the Resolve to Stop the Violence program with Michael Hennessy and Sonny Schwartz. Thank you.
Good afternoon. In 1996, my program staff came to me and asked if they could put 60 violent men in a dormitory with no jail cells to run an anti-violence counseling program. I thought they were nuts. Housing inmates with violent histories in an open setting goes against what I call common sense for jails. But my staff told me their vision. For many years, we have had successful drug treatment programs for men and women prisoners operating on a therapeutic community model. Since about 50% of the people in our jails are facing drug charges, these programs address a significant proportion of our population. But the one segment of our population that jails and prisons do very little for is the very type of jail prisoner that the public fears most, the violent prisoner. So their logic ran, why not take the therapeutic community model that has been so successful with drug offenders and apply the same approach to violent offenders? Over the course of 15 months, we convened meetings with community stakeholders, seeking ideas for what should be in such a program. We met with victim rights advocates, ex-offenders, religious leaders, law enforcement officers, professional counselors in an effort to create a program based on the principles of restorative justice. Our studies resulted in the creation of a program we call Resolve to Stop the Violence Project, or Rsvp. The program is designed to immerse an offender in an intense, peer-based self-evaluation of what causes a man to use violence as a form of control. We emphasize three main components: offender accountability, victim restoration, and community involvement. This is accomplished by raising awareness of social, cultural, and personal belief systems that promote violence, by teaching that one has a choice as an alternative to violence, by improving communication skills, by creating empathy for victims, and by emphasizing the need to make positive contributions to the community upon release. The curriculum is based on a violence prevention program called Man Alive, but also includes the opportunity to earn a high school degree in our nation's only first charter high school, and to participate in substance abuse treatment, which so many violent acts are exacerbated by drugs and alcohol. Survivors of violent crime play a key role in this program. They were part of the planning process that created the curriculum. They participate in frank dialogue with the offenders every week in victim impact segments. And we have established a community center dedicated to providing direct assistance and counseling to the victims of the offenders in our programs. Prisoners are in a peer-based counseling for 10 hours a day, 5 days a week. Interestingly, the program is not voluntary. We assign men to this program based on our review of their charges and their criminal histories. All the men have two things in common. They're all violent and they're all getting out. During the past year, 26% of the men had current charges of domestic violence. 18% were charged with robbery or burglary. Over 10% had charges involving firearms or assault with a deadly weapon. And about 20% had current drug charges with a history of violence. As an ironic and unanticipated benefit, the Rsvp housing unit has become the safest, most conflict-free dorm in the entire 2,000-bed jail system. During the program's first year, there was one fight between participants and no assaults on staff, compared to the rest of our jail system, where during the same time frame, there were 300 prisoner-on-prisoner assaults and 75 assaults on staff. We recognize that we may only have a person in the program for a month or two, so we have developed a curriculum that teaches the essential elements in the first 30 days, and we have set up a post-release counseling center for ex-offenders. 75% of the staff that we have hired are either ex-offenders or survivors of violent crime. It is my belief that the counselors with the greatest credibility are those who can truthfully say, I have been in your shoes, there is a way out and a path to a brighter future. Early on, I knew that an objective evaluation would be important to see if we were having the desired impact. We hired Dr. James Gilligan, then of the Harvard Center on the Study of Violence. Dr. Gilligan has studied the program now for the past 6 years, and the results have been startling. For a violent offender who participates in our program for 4 months, there is an 80% less likelihood that he will get rearrested for a violent act when compared to a similar control group. For a violent offender who spends 3 months in the program, he is 51% less likely to be arrested for a violent act. Our program's motto is, violence is learned, it can be unlearned. In a time when jails and prisons are seen primarily as a place for punishment and retribution, the Rsvp approach takes the longer view and shows that government can do better than blindly releasing thousands of violent men back into society knowing that new victims await their return. As we have seen just recently, when a government imprisons, government cannot abdicate its responsibility to run safe and humane prisons, and it can, in fact, do a great deal more.
Sonny Schwartz, may I ask you the first question? Thank you very much, Sheriff. Ms. Schwartz, if at a time when all Americans are thinking about conditions in prisons, an award to this program would send what message? An award to this program.
It would send a very clear message that we have to be bold and direct with our leadership, that we have to train our people who run jails and prisons. Things are universal. When you put people in a position of power, you have an obligation to train them and create a humane jail. That's what we're doing in San Francisco. We're dealing with, quite frankly, monstrous behaving men. And we have seen dramatic beginning results. And we have to constantly train our deputies. It's a totality of circumstances, training our deputies, training our medical staff, as well as having a rigorous schedule for the offenders as well. This is not a San Francisco situation. This is universal.
Thank you. Lee.
I'm wondering, either one of you can answer this. What is it that converts skeptics, like you were at the beginning, Sheriff? Is it the process by which you designed the program, or is it the operation of the program?
Well, fortunately, I think at this point, what converts skeptics is the results, that we have an objective study that shows the results are positive. In my case, I had a great deal of confidence in my staff, and I told them we're going to start slow. And we did start slow and then slowly build it up to a 60-person unit. And as I saw with my own eyes that within the first 24 or 48 hours of a man coming into this program, not wanting to participate, but looking around and seeing a whole room of men just as tough or tougher than they are, and then all of a sudden decide maybe there's something here to learn, then that converted me as well.
And Ms. Shore, if I may add to this, it's a real important question. Restorative justice is a universal situation. It's across partisan lines. It includes the victims. It includes the offenders and their families. It includes the community. We're all, every single person in this room and outside are affected by violence and crime. It impacts everyone, if not directly, indirectly. So when you really break down the elements of restorative justice, it's simply recognize that crime hurts everyone, victim, offender, community, and it creates an obligation to make things right. As law enforcement, we're about re-owning law enforcement to really serve and protect, because at least 90% of our incarcerated people are getting out into all of our neighborhoods. So we feel it's our professional obligation. When you break it down and provide services to the victims, it's not just focusing on the offender, it's including everyone. Put everyone on an even playing field.
Carl, then David.
Could you explain how you select participants in the program, and also the control versus experimental group? Are all people who are incarcerated, all men who are incarcerated and have histories of violence, eligible? And how do they get selected? And then how do you create the control group that you were comparing them to?
The selection process is done by people's current charges and by their criminal histories, first of all. Second of all, we do eliminate people who are charged with first-degree murder and people who have been involved in ongoing altercations in the jails. In other words, they've been disruptive. So those are the only sort of disqualifications, except for, of course, people who have no violence in their background. They're disqualified as well.
And then randomly within that, or?
No, we recruit. We also look to see how long we're going to have the person in a county jail. Look to see what their next court date is, or maybe how long of a sentence they have, because we want to spend some time with them. Then Dr. Gilligan and Dr. Bandy Leaf of Yale created the control group of similar offenders who did not get selected for the program merely because of space. We've got about 2,000 people in custody, and this program holds about 60 people.
We rarely have first offenders.
No.
These are repeat offenders, and many people, as the sheriff said, we don't have first-degree murder, but there are numerous men who have gone through our